Welcome to another episode of the Environmental Protection Agency's monthly television program, The Environment Matters. This program is set to educate you of your responsibilities and roles as citizens of our beautiful country, Guyana. I am your moderator, LaDonna Kisoon. Thank you for being here for another episode. This month, we will be discussing biodiversity. In this month's episode, we will kickstart our conversation for International Day for Biological Diversity, or commonly known as IDB, celebrated annually on May 22nd. IDB seeks to bring attention to the issues affecting biodiversity. This year, International Day for Biological Diversity is celebrated under the theme Building a Shared Future for All Life. This slogan serves to remind us that biodiversity serves as several matters so as to ensure the sustainable development of all countries and to seek from challenges. It is the foundation from which we are built. In light of this, Guyana has always been the leading outstanding nation for initiatives to ensure the sustainable use and conservation of our rich biodiversity. One such initiative was the establishment of the Iwokrama Center for Rainforest Conservation and Development in 1996. Iwokrama is one of our prized possessions, which serves as a model to the world for research, tourism, and sustainable forest management. To ensure more of this magnificent center is highlighted is no other than Dr. Raquel Thomas-Ceasar, the Director for Resource Management and Training at Iwokrama. So thank you so much, Dr. Thomas, for joining us for this episode and taking time out of your very busy schedule to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. All right.
For having me.
All right. So do you want to share with us a little bit more about yourself? I know I have known you for a number of years, but you can just tell our viewers a little bit more about who you are.
Yeah, and you're telling me you're a biology graduate as well. So am
I.
Yes, I'm a scientist. I'm a tropical forest ecologist. What I do at Iwokrama is that we oversee the monitoring of the natural resources, research, training, working with communities. So a number of things which we'll learn a little bit about later. I'm also a mother, and as you know, I love nature, I love Iwokrama, and I love the mission of what the program is about.
All right. So like I said, I've known you for a number of years, and I do know that environment and conservation is a passion of yours.
Yes.
So I am very intrigued to have this conversation.
Thank you.
And I do hope you, our viewers, do enjoy this episode with Dr. Thomas. All right. So first off, let's talk a little bit about Iwokrama and how it was established. And I do know Iwokrama is a protected area. So how did all of that come to be?
Yes, so Iwokrama is a very, very special program. And I think a program that all of Guyana can be very proud about. So in 1989, then President Hoyt made this offer of 1 million acres, about 1 million acres of Guyana's prized intact tropical rainforest. And this was made available on the international arena at a Commonwealth meeting in Malaysia. I don't like to say donated because it's still ours. So it was made available for research and development to the world, for research and development as it relates to tropical rainforests. As you know, at the time there was a lot of concern about countries mismanaging their forests. We're losing rainforests at a high rate. And Guyana is one of the top countries in terms of having intact forest landscapes. So I think there was no better place. Of course, it's placed in the center of Guyana. We usually call it the green heart of Guyana. One of my colleagues like to say is the navel of Guyana. But it's a very, very important space, and I think one that we all can be very proud of. As you know, or maybe many people may not know, is the second protected area that was developed in Guyana, the first being Kaieteur National Park. Kaieteur National Park actually is the third oldest protected area in South America since 1929. What happened though with it was not just offering the space for research and development in 1989, what had to happen then was a series of decisions had to be made, because at the time there was no protected area legislation, right? So a whole Iwokrama Act or legislation had to be drafted to legalize the area. So in 1996, which this year will be 26 years ago, that the Iwokrama Act was actually passed through Parliament, actually establishing, it's a very long word, name, the Iwokrama International Center for Rainforest Conservation and Development. So I usually say, while we're international, we're also very locally grounded.
Yes, Iwokrama is such a pristine and a beautiful place to go to. You'll definitely be able, just to have a glimpse of it with some footage that we'll share later on in the program. So I'm happy that you made mention of the fact that, Iwokrama has been set aside for the world at large, but for a front, it has been set aside for us as Guyanese. Yes. What is the mission of Iwokrama?
Well, the model that was set up, and I must say that the wonderful thing about Iwokrama has been supported by all administrations. So I should mention that while President Hoyt was the one who presented it to the Commonwealth, ensuring a partnership with the Commonwealth, President Chedi Jagan was the one who signed off years later on the Iwokrama Act. And the mission has always been to create models of sustainable use, to show that a rainforest can be used, but also preserved, protected. Conserved is actually the best way. And in that whole notion of conserving is the whole concept of sustainable use. As when you use sustainably, is that you can ensure that there will be left for future generations.
Definitely. And we're, like you said, you're a mother.
Yes.
And I always say that, in these times, with everything that's happening in the world, we need to ensure that we leave the world for those to come.
Absolutely.
So sustainable development, sustainable management is definitely key for generations to come. All right. So Iwokrama, like you said, it's a long name.
Yes.
So we're doing research, we're doing conservation. So what are some of the key focus on work that is done at the center?
Well, I think when we're talking about Iwokrama, we really have to start from the beginning and what was enshrined in the act that we had to do. So in the beginning, a lot of baseline work was done. And you can term it as the first phase of research in Iwokrama. So we had to, Biodiversity Day. We had to do a lot of biodiversity studies. So looking at, what are the plants, what are the flora, the fauna, where they were located and so on. Because one of the first things that we had to do was actually zone the area. So the Iwokrama forest is actually zoned into two strategic zones. One is known as the Wilderness Preserve. So that is the part of the forest that we cannot touch. It's also used as a control site because we need to monitor what we do in the other zone, which is known as a sustainable utilization area. And it's in that area that we can do our sustainable use activities. So the Wilderness Preserve operates as the control to actually look and see the impacts that we may be having in the sustainable utilization area. So the zoning process took about 2 years. It was a long process, and you had to look at, of course, the flora, the fauna. You had to look at cultural aspects, spiritual aspects. We worked a lot with the communities, government agencies, and so on to help us make that decision. It was very participatory, which Iwokrama is known for. So, along with that, later on we had different phases of our research, and our research is always centered on the 3 pillars of sustainability, which is, of course, the biodiversity or the environment. Then you have the people, which of course is a very, very important aspect. And I always say, when you're talking about natural resource management, it's about managing people, managing the resources. So managing the people that are managing the resources. So, and then we did, as we continued, we had different phases of research. We run our 3rd phase currently of research. So that has been a very important aspect of Iwokrama in terms of how we zoned the area, how we started the first research work, and so on. But one of the key things that Iwokrama really makes it a success, if you want, is the partnerships. And we have to talk about the different levels of partnerships. So the highest being, of course, well, I don't want to say the highest because you can't really put it on a level, but the first major partnership was between the government of Guyana and the Commonwealth. So this is a Commonwealth program in partnership with the government of Guyana. I think that is a really important aspect. Iwokrama also has key partnerships with many agencies. So whether it's the government agencies, we're talking here about donors, international universities, international organizations, and of course a wide range of partners. But one of the key partners that we have are the communities that we work with, and primarily the North Rupununi communities, indigenous communities. We're primarily Makushi, but we do have a relationship with some other communities as well. But we have a very key partnership with those 20 indigenous communities. And of course, without these communities, I don't think Iwokrama would be what it is. So we could talk a little bit more about that relationship as well.
Problem. I'm glad that you mentioned working with the communities, working with other stakeholders, and tying in the sustainable management, because like you rightfully said, when you talk about sustainable management, you're talking about persons managing those resources. So with the work of the center, including the 20 communities, how have you seen the communities working or handling things with relation to the conservation and monitoring and business development, such as sustainable timber harvesting, ecotourism, because I know Iwokrama plays a big role in that aspect here in Guyana, and also with training and research. How has the community been engaged, and how are they managing?
In terms of the relationship with Iwokrama, I would say that Iwokrama has a very important agreement. In fact, two documents signed that seal our partnership. So we have an MOU with a body known as the North Rupununi District Development Board, and that's made up of the 20 indigenous communities that we work with. But we also have a secondary document, which is really, really very important. It's called a Collaborative Management Agreement. And this outlines how this partnership works and how we co-manage the Iwokrama forest with the communities. Also, a very important aspect of our partnership is that the communities have first preferences to jobs at Iwokrama once they have the qualifications. So if anybody visited Iwokrama, they'll notice that a lot of our staff are from the indigenous communities. Our training programs that we've offered over the years has been in collaboration with the communities as well, but has also seen capacity built over the years. Communities that in Guyana and in the North Rupununi where we work naturally did conservation. And when we talk about conservation, we talk about using the resources in a wise way. So just by their lifestyles, fishing and hunting and those aspects, which I must also say, the 20 communities that we work with do have access to Iwokrama forest for subsistence activities, and that's enshrined in our act, that those rights are protected. So I need to really mention that, right? What we've seen too is not only capacity building over the years in terms of communities and conservation, but we've also seen them moving that to their communities, where there are several programs and businesses that have been developed within several communities. You might hear of the Riwa Eco Lodge, which are doing outstanding tourism, Sarama Eco Lodge, Cayman House, which is part of Yupakari. These are some premier destinations for ecotourism in Guyana now. So it's very, very proud. And you have other conservation projects. I saw featured in the newspapers the other day was a not sea turtle, river turtle, because you don't have sea, the sea is not there. River turtle conservation in Iwokrama, and they have now established like a turtle festival every year, which they celebrate. Another community, I think, in partnership with Karanamba, they're doing, I think it's Quaimata, if I'm not mistaken. They're also doing like a bird festival every year. I mean, COVID didn't help over the past 2 years, but I think now that it's kind of subsiding, we can get back engaging in those kinds of activities. But how communities can use the resources for livelihoods, how can we prioritize that and enhance it so that they make a meaningful livelihood off of resources is an important aspect of our work as well, and showcasing that it can be done.
Great. So it's clear that your students have now become the teachers.
Yeah.
So they've been branching off and doing their own stuff.
Yeah, and in the past, of course, even when we have training and so on, we've had many community experts come in as trainers. I personally have learned so much from Indigenous people over the years. I couldn't be where I was without, having those experts impart, my tree spotting skills, some of the things that we do. I have a very strong team of rangers who they teach me a lot as well in terms of monitoring and so on. It's really, really important. And it's important to see many of these persons that have passed through Iwokrama, whether it's training programs or whether elevation within the management system of Iwokrama, because many are managers now, that the confidence instilled in them by that you see now, the communities are voting them in as leaders. So village Tushaus, village on the councils and so on, several people who passed through Iwokrama has had an impact. So I'm very proud of that. And it's not only communities. If you look at many natural resource agencies in Guyana, many of the heads or deputy heads actually passed through Iwokrama. So we're talking, or has had a partnership or some sort. So we're talking here about CI, WWF, we're talking about Guyana Marine Turtle Conservation Society, which I'm also part of. So it's really interesting to see how these partnerships could elevate leadership in communities and also for other natural resource aspects of Guyana.
Yeah, most definitely. One of the things I can say is, if you do take time to visit the center, you will get lost in the pristine, the just being in nature, and you will not leave there not having a different insight into what makes Guyana what Guyana is.
Yes.
And I always say it takes you to a different level when you get out of the city, away from traffic, all the traffic and the buildings, and you get there and I remember the first time in studying, we took our field trip, and one of the things that really allowed me to be one with nature was the sky in the night. Like the stars. Like, what? Being in the city, you do see the stars, but not like...
No, because they have a lot of light pollution in the city.
Yeah, the experience of being out in, nature and just being able to take it all in. It just makes you feel complete. Yeah, if I should say that. It makes you feel very complete.
I think if every Guyanese could experience that, it would be so wonderful. Yes, but that's a dream. And I really hope that it can happen.
Yes, well, things are definitely on that path, and I do hope that, everybody takes the opportunity to make the most, to see our beautiful country and to have those experiences that we're talking about. I know you've talked a lot about your accomplishments at the center, but if you were to pick 2 or 3, what would you say would have been your major accomplishments for the 26 years that you guys have been around?
I think the capacity building aspect, the investment in people, because at the end of the day, for me that's top. Because where I see people now, and the fact that they're impacting conservation and biodiversity management in Guyana, whether it's from a government level, an NGO level, or from a community level, I think is really significant. So that's one of the things that I'm very proud. Secondly, we are a premier tourism destination in Guyana, so that would be the second. And I think in terms of natural resource management, how we're attempting to show that you can do sustainable forestry in a good way. The fact is that Guyana does have very good forestry system set up. But Iwokrama is trying to take it to a higher level. We're FSC certified for a number of years. Of course, so we can probably talk a little bit more about that. I know we haven't really mentioned it. But it's something I think that we can be proud of, because it took a lot of effort to get where we are at the moment.
Definitely. All right. So before we go to our break, Iwokrama is, like you mentioned, over 1 million acres of rainforest.
About 1 million acres, yes.
Of rainforest land. And Guyana, over the years, have demonstrated its commitment to combating climate change. So how has Iwokrama stayed committed to fighting against climate change?
Well, I think, you know what, in terms of climate change, I think just having Iwokrama as part of the protected area system, I think is a major aspect. But through the years, in terms of research and in selecting thematic areas, we've always included, because we know that's something that Guyana is interested in, and certainly that the kind of research that we do can have an impact. So we have had some research programs over the years, some other proposed projects, related, that we have been dealing with climate aspects, RED Plus, and those kinds of things. Iwokrama was also involved in developing a training module related to forest and climate. And with that, we've trained over 500 persons in Ghana. Very simplified manual. I think it was translated into about 7 languages, including Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese. I think I can't remember if it's Mandarin. And some other languages. Of course, it's English. And I think that is significant, because you really need to get the message out there in the best and simple way. So we do have that manual, and with that we do training of trainers as well, who can then go out and train. Why don't we even did training of trainers for communities? So we're able to kind of have the spread of training a little broader and so on. So I think. In fact, also we have a strong monitoring program as well. Also helps with giving information in terms of climate and so on. We also have some research projects, more recently related to hydrology aspects. So looking at that and linking it with climate, and so it's really important. So I think Iwokrama is just perfectly positioned. Another thing I always say why we're perfectly positioned is just as you leave Iwokrama, you drive for about 20 minutes, half an hour, depending on the state of the road at the time of the year. You get into the savannah. So Iwokrama is what is called like an ecotonal. You have that ecotonal area, and you're a biologist, right? That, between the rainforests and savannas, that would be one of the areas that would be really visibly impacted if you have changes in climate. So I think it's a very important area with which we should keep an eye on and keep doing research to see the impacts of climate change.
Most definitely. All right, so we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back to continue our conversation with Dr. Raquel Thomas-Ceasar. And when we'll come back, she's going to tell us how Iwokrama has maintained its sustainable forest management. So stay tuned and we'll be right back with The Environment Matters.
Are you involved in a business or thinking about starting one? Do you know there may be environmental impacts from business activities? According to the Environmental Protection Act of 1996, businesses such as gas stations, rice mills, large-scale agriculture and poultry farms, large-scale mining and forestry operations, hotels, and resorts must be authorized. Persons proposing any of these activities need to submit an application for environmental authorization to the EPA. Attention all miners. Mining is important to Guyana's development, and so is our biodiversity. Practice smart mining. Use a retort, dispose of your waste properly, manage your tailings well, and reclaim mined out areas. Remember, improper mining is a threat to your health, biodiversity, and a hindrance to prosperity. A message from the Environmental Protection Agency and Ministry of Natural Resources with funding from JEP through the United Nations Development Program.
At the Environmental Protection Agency, we believe that the environment is everybody's business. We can start caring for our planet by becoming more environmentally friendly in our everyday actions. Here's what you can do. Dispose of waste in a garbage bin. Clean our drains, yards, and carpets regularly. Take a reusable shopping bag to the market. Support local butchers and farmers to reduce packaged waste. Plant a kitchen garden, trees and flowers. Compost your organic waste. Conserve water and electricity. Carry a reusable water bottle. These little acts are good for your health and that of the environment. Remember, healthy people work better and achieve more, and together, small actions make a big difference. For further information on how you can help, please contact the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, Ganges Street, Sophia, or telephone us at 225-5467. You can also visit our website, epagana.org, or our Facebook and Instagram pages.
Welcome back to the Environmental Protection Agency's monthly television program, The Environment Matters. I am your moderator, LaDonna Kisoon, and chatting with me has been Miss Dr. Let me get this right, Dr. Raquel Thomas-Ceasar. And we've been talking a little bit about Iwokrama, its sustainable management, biodiversity, conservation, and all the beautiful work that they have been doing. Just before we had our break, we were talking about how Iwokrama has maintained the sustainable forest management program. So would you like to tell us a little bit more about that and how the program has impacted the communities culturally, its people business-wise, and also ecotourism?
Yes. So I like to call it the business of conservation. The thing is, our first chair of the board, he was from India. He is from India, still alive. Mr. Swaminathan. He coined the phrase, and I'm just pray it may not be the exact thing he said, but he said, conservation without money is just a conversation. And it's something that I refer to over and over again. Conservation is very expensive.
Yes, it is.
Right? So I think that was the aim of Iwokrama. It was devised to show that while we need to set aside some of our wonderful natural heritage, we also need to use it because we need to make money from it, because people's livelihoods are at stake. So I think that was an important aspect of Guyana, of Iwokrama's work, and the fact that Iwokrama was developed to show that you can create models of sustainable use. The areas that Iwokrama, of course, chose to focus on. The first thing when you think about using a forest is timber. Mm-hmm. So, of course, that was one of the business areas that Iwokrama went. And people say, oh, you're a protected area, you're cutting trees. And we're a protected area with a difference. And it's enshrined in the Iwokrama Act, the act which Iwokrama follows in terms of managing its resources. So we did start a partnership, a timber harvesting operation in... what year was it? 2007. In 2008, we got our first certificate. We did have, of course, some challenges. I mean, with any business, there are challenges. And we were doing very well up to 2011. And then our partners, they actually ran into some problems. And they had to close and shut operations. So we actually shut operations for a few years, and then we reopened and got recertified in 2015. And since then, we have been going along. We've had 2 partners, since. In addition to, of course, linking with the community partners. And while it's challenging, I think it's important to show, I think the whole aspect of timber harvesting actually creates also knowledge, because it requires so many different levels of training, including, how you learn about your flora. You have to have your tree spotters and so on.
Yeah.
I do believe sustainable use actually allows you to learn more about your natural resources. So we are a internationally certified operation. It's FSC at the moment, or Forest Stewardship Council. And I think we do have a lot of lessons that we can share as it relates to that. There's one community that lies within the Iwokrama forest, so they actually benefit directly from the business in terms of securing some funds once part of their area is being logged within the phase of logging. But what is really interesting is that they have gained the confidence over the years to say, hey, we want to do our own timber operation. And they're currently on part of their title land. They're actually doing their own timber business at the moment. So really wishing them a lot of success, Fairview Village. And I think they gained that confidence from looking at the work that Iwokrama was doing. And that's what we would hope. Once you stay within the management systems, the management rules and guidelines, because it's that could be challenging. But I think it's really positive to see. There's some other communities who are engaged in forestry activities as well, outside of Iwokrama, but part of the North Rupununi District Development Board, who we partner with. So I think if Iwokrama could be that model to show how you can do it, I think it's really good.
Most definitely. And let me just take this opportunity to commend Iwokrama and the surrounding communities on their level of compliance. I know not just internationally, but locally, you guys have standards, including the Environmental Protection Agency's authorization process that you must comply with.
Absolutely.
So it definitely starts with your local and regional compliance, and hence you go onwards to international compliance. So congratulations to you guys over there. In our conversation just a bit ago, you made mention about the experience with flora and fauna, and Iwokrama has unforgettable flora and fauna. So right off of the bat, outside of that, I know you guys have a rich sense of Amerindian history. So would you kindly share with us some of the unique and endemic species that you have within that area, and some of the Amerindian culture that you would have experienced there that may not be experienced anywhere else?
Okay. I do have to continue with the other businesses that we do, but this feeds in really nicely. In terms of flora and fauna, I think what Guyana has, and you stand a chance to see in Iwokrama, is what we call the giants of El Dorado. So you have these fantastic species. So you have the jaguar, the giant river otter, the giant river turtle, giant anaconda, for those who like snakes. These are just a few of those giants. So Iwokrama is really that place where you can have a chance to come and see and interact. Well, not directly interact, but at least see. We hope not directly. We do have that people look forward to. We do have a black caiman named Sankar, who is usually very visible, swimming around outside on the Esquibo outside the Iwokrama River Lodge. That's another one of the giants that you can be sure to see when you visit Iwokrama. In terms of flora, in terms of species that you won't see anywhere in the world, you have the chance to see the wonderful greenheart, which Guyana is known for. There's another species known as Wamara, which is another prized species. Other species, when you come to Iwokrama, you are sure to see and experience. And you can experience these either around the grounds, going even at the forest around the Iwokrama Lodge, or you can visit the Canopy Walkway, where we have a second tourist lodge, and you can interact with these species. Plant species you can interact with easily.
But there are some animals that you can interact with. I remember
there are some species you really shouldn't, some are poisonous, some are, some have spines and so on. So you still have to be very careful how you interact with nature. But these are really important. In terms of culture, just the indigenous cuisine, the food, the tuma, the cassava, the farine. The first time I went to Iwokrama, I'd never had farine.
Oh.
And now I love farine. I love it soaked and fried, like fried rice kind of thing.
Yes.
I don't eat it hard. So the kind of the food, the knowledge of the people that they have so kindly shared, over the years. Some of the stories, some of the story of the Iwokrama Mountains, for example. They talk about it's a place of refuge, because when it was intertribal, let's say, warfare in the old days, the Makushi people fled into the mountains to seek refuge. There's evidence that there were the war clubs. If you visit Karnambu, you'll see on the wall there are a number of these different types of clubs. It did show that they were tools for protecting themselves as communities. So that whole spiritual aspects, learning about the different kinds of folklore. Yeah, you ever heard of the bush dai? You heard of the what do you call it? T-bang, the little man in the forest. So I've worked in the forest for 26, 27 years. I haven't seen any. So, but you hear all these folklores and so on. It's really interesting. Then seeing, the other aspects of culture, the music, the dancing, the ways of dancing, the kind of costumes and the kind of costumes they put together from their historical perspective. And so it's always really, really, really very interested.
Yes, definitely. And I know it's very captivating. Like you mentioned, the food, the experience with their music, and
how they roast fish. How they roast fish
pretty interesting.
I love how indigenous people roast fish, because I'm not a big fish eater, but they get me to eat it.
Surprisingly, and I always say this, I guess this is one of the reasons why I like to visit these areas, is like the food, it just tastes different. You taste like the natural flavors in it as compared to somebody trying to cook it out here in the cities. So it is a full experience when you get to these communities and these areas. I know you made mention of some of the animals and, some of the ones that you shouldn't come into contact with right off the bat. But I do remember when I visited, one of the things that I really enjoyed were the butterflies. I'm a big butterfly fan. And if you are, Iwokrama is one of the places to visit if you want to see butterflies. Yes. Butterflies. I'm a big fan of butterflies.
We had a butterfly project a few years ago, but unfortunately that came to an end. So we did learn a lot about the butterflies in Iwokrama.
Yes, like I said, that was one of my favorite experiences visiting Iwokrama. As we're on the topic of biodiversity, and like I made mention at the beginning of the program, the month of May, we are celebrating International Biological Diversity Day, and that will be celebrated on May 22nd. We are in what we're calling a new decade of biodiversity. So can you summarize how has biodiversity management and conservation here in Guyana, how have you seen it progress over the years that has passed?
I think Guyana has always been in the forefront in terms of conservation aspects. I think just the whole offer of a place like Iwokrama in 1989, that preceded the 1992 Rio Convention, where all these conventions on biological diversity, climate, and desertification, they came out out of that conference in 1992. But Iwokrama was before that. So I think we have to commend ourselves to being very visionary. Also, currently, the protected areas is a very important aspect of our biological conservation, biological species conservation. We're at 8.2%, I think, at the moment, in terms of. I know we committed in 2015 at the Paris meeting on climate change that another 2 million hectares of forest will go into the system. So I know that the government will be working on that to ensure, and that will take us to 17%, which is the actual, under what they call the Aichi targets, that countries should have at least 17% of their forest on the protection. So I think Guyana has done or is doing. We still have some way to go, but we're on track to achieving those targets. In terms of forest use, I think we've done really well with forestry. I did work at Forestry Commission for 4 years, so they're very close to my heart. I was also chair of the Protected Areas Commission Board, so PAC is also very close to my heart as government as government organizations. So I think we do have very good guidelines for forestry and forestry development. I think we have a lot to be proud of. But I do still think we need to be very careful in terms of some of our other resource uses, in particular mining, and even oil extraction. Because when we're talking about biodiversity, you got to not only talk about terrestrial, you got to think about oceans. Yeah. So we really have to ensure, in terms of oil, which is new, that we adhere to environmental accountability, environmental transparency, ensure that oil companies follow the guidelines, because we would not want to get an oil spill, for example, which would be very harmful to our biodiversity and will be devastating for us as a country. So we really have to ensure accountability from those aspects. What I would like to see from the mining industry, especially in particular gold mining, is strengthening of that aspect of that they're required to do in terms of reforestation. Because with mining, you do have clearing of forests. With forestry, you have regenerative capacity and so on. So that's easier. But with mining, I certainly would like to see some improvements in terms of how we look at reforesting and reclaiming the areas. And I always say in terms of mining, the area doesn't have to be reclaimed in the exact same way that it was before. Because I had the fortunate pleasure to visit Australia, and I didn't know that one of their converted areas, a mined area for bauxite mining, was converted into a tourism area. It was a wetland was created, and it become a huge place for people to go and do birding. So there are ways that you can also do restoration, reclamation work. I know GGMC have been doing some pilots around the country. I think in some cases even using agroforestry aspects and so on. So those are things that we should promote. Guyana also is on track with the low carbon development strategy, because when we're talking about conservation, we have to look at how we're sustainably using our resources. So it does address this use of forestry. I think it does address this use of other resource uses and so on. So I think it's really good, and I would support the LCDS, and of course Iwokrama is looking forward to playing a key role in terms of any national strategies, including the low carbon development strategy. Is a very important aspect for us as we proceed.
No problem. So yes, as we continue on our journey, at the Environmental Protection Agency, one of the things that we always have as a focus is strengthening policies, ensuring that systems are put in place to maintain and preserve what we do have, be it terrestrial, aquatic, forest. So like you, I do commend where we are, but I do also agree that we do have somewhere to go before getting to 2030. And as we wrap up, and this is my proud moment, Iwokrama is known as an award-winning ecotourism gem. So, kindly share with us, how exactly did you get there? What does this award really mean to Iwokrama?
Yes, well, as I said, we didn't get a chance to talk about our tourism aspect. I mean, we do training as a business as well. Training is related to protected areas, but the ecotourism is probably our oldest business. And I think it's certainly a business that we can use as a model to show that it can be done and enhance conservation activities. So as far back as I would say Iwokrama tourism took off around 2002, and that is when we completed our canopy walkway and or the big building at the Iwokrama River Lodge, if you remember that, the Fred Addycock building. I think those two structures, and then developing or increasing the number of cabins and so on, really enhanced both sites actually to become premier tourism destinations. The canopy walkway is the only one, I think, in the region. So it's a highlight. It is a highlight. Iwokrama, when you come to the River Lodge, which is by the Escobar River, is stunning. It's one of the highlights there too is doing the Turtle Mountain hike. I don't know if you had a chance.
No, I haven't.
You hadn't a chance to do that. Well, that's a big one.
On my
River
bucket
trips, river trips and so on. I must say that at the Canopy Walkway site, we have another smaller lodge as well, which is the Atta Lodge. There's an opportunity to stay there and really be surrounded by the forest as well. So I do think that Iwokrama is a fixture in terms of visiting the North Rupununi in Guyana, or the Rupununi site. We collaborate with a number of other tourist operators. So it's not just about coming to Iwokrama, but also going to see the savannas and interacting with the indigenous communities and seeing some of the wonderful products. So it's a collaborative product. But also, in terms of adventure and hiking and river trips and so on, we also offer things like bird watching, nocturnal night spotting. There is a tour that you have a chance to go out and see a jaguar, but it's a chance, not a promise. So that is a highlight. If people can see these kinds of biodiversity, people leave Iwokrama really, really very happy.
Satisfied and happy.
But it is a wonderful place. I'd encourage everyone to visit. We have 2 lodges, so you have your choice. You can visit one or you can visit both, but I do recommend that you do the Canopy Walkway as well. You do the Turtle Mountain hike, river trips, and so on at Iwokrama. It's really, really something that all Guyanese and we would hope visitors coming to Guyana can experience.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas-Ceasar, for being here with us and giving us more insight into Iwokrama. Again, it is such a magnificent place to be, and once you have that opportunity, you should go and have that experience. And as we wrap up our program, we have a little clip to show you, compliments of Iwokrama, so that you can have that visual experience of what is there for you. I have been your moderator, LaDonna Kisoon. Continue to follow us on all social media platforms. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments about our program or anything that bothers you about the environment, do make contact with us. All our numbers are listed. And again, stay safe, Guyana. Until next time.
In the land of legends, many stories have been told. Many years ago, the mighty tribal nation of the Makushi were faced with a battle. The mountains became their refuge, their safe haven. The Iwokrama Forest, a 1 million acre protected area in Guyana, is zoned into a wilderness preserve and a sustainable utilization area. Bordered mainly by rivers, including the largest river in Guyana, the Essequibo, Iwokrama is one of 5 protected areas in Guyana. This gift to the world in 1989 by the government of Guyana to the Commonwealth through the late President Hoyt was meant to be a space for models of research and development as it related to intact tropical rainforest spaces. In 1996, the Iwokrama Act was passed by the late President Cheddi Jagan, cementing the establishment of the International Center for Rainforest Conservation and Development. Iwokrama also shares a very important co-management agreement with the 20 indigenous communities of the North Rupununi, giving them a direct say in how the forest is managed. The reserve is bisected by a public access road, or so-called a trail, and due to the public access, including Iwokrama's management activities and also a public access river, a robust monitoring program exists. We have a team of rangers who monitor the forest for illegal activities, biodiversity changes, and many other biophysical and social aspects. This road connects the Iwokrama forest to the North Rupununi savannas. Linked to our monitoring and other activities is the Iwokrama Research Program, or what we call the Science Program. Iwokrama Center has a long history of international and national level research, and this is a mandate vested in the management of the center by the creators of the program, and a long-term aim to be a center of excellence for conservation education. Also, the models of sustainable use at Iwokrama serve as an opportunity to conduct inquiry science to assess the impacts of these use activities. Conservation education is tied to capacity building for conservation leadership, and Iwokrama works with the youth in schools and wildlife clubs of the associated communities, particularly with Fairview Village, which is the only community that lies within the protected area. The hub of Iwokrama is the Iwokrama River Lodge and Research Center. It is at this site that the first field station was built in the early 90s by Sarama village elder, the late Fred Alicock, and his very able team. Conservation, by any imagination, is not cheap, and Iwokrama's first chair of the International Board of Trustees had a valuable quote to share with us. Conservation without money is just a conversation. So, one of Iwokrama's financial means had to include business development. Ecotourism was the first enterprise, and Iwokrama boasts 2 ecotourism lodges, the Iwokrama River Lodge and a smaller lodge, the Atta Lodge. But at this smaller lodge is the highlight, or one of the highlights of Iwokrama, and it has the only canopy walkway that is found in the region. The canopy walkway is made of aluminum and is attached to trees, and it also serves as a site for training activities, which brings us to another business of Iwokrama's. Iwokrama offers courses related to tourism, rangering, collaborative natural resource management, climate and forest botany, wildlife management, sustainable timber management, just to name a few. A view from Turtle Mountain shows how vast the Iwokrama forest is. Iwokrama's third business is an internationally certified timber operation, and Iwokrama follows all the relevant national and international guidelines following the 3 pillars of sustainability, inclusive of social, financial, and environmental aspects. Only 29% of the forest will be harvested, and Iwokrama utilizes a 60-year cycle. Managing a protected area also has many challenges. Illegal hunting is one aspect that our rangers face, but the most challenging to date is the illegal gold mining, which occurs on one border of the Iwokrama forest in the Siparuni area. Iwokrama is grateful for collaboration partnerships with the government, Ministry of Natural Resources, wardens, and Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, the Guyana Police Force, as they help us with enforcement related to this dastardly act. So like the mountains, Iwokrama has survived, and we have survived 30 years plus from the offer to the Commonwealth. And as we celebrate this year, 2021, 25 years since the passage of the Iwokrama Act, this is certainly a patrimony we can all be proud of.
Do you have an environmental complaint? Then the Environmental Protection Agency wishes to advise that you can report an environmental complaint at the agency via one of the following. You can call our 24-hour hotline number at 225-5469, or you can drop us an email at complaints@epaguyana.org. Or you can message us on our Facebook page at EPA Guyana, or you can message us directly on Instagram at EPAGY. Please note, when submitting an environmental complaint, you would need to submit the following: name of complainant, that is the person who is making the complaint, the address of that person, a contact number, as well as the alleged polluter, a name for them, or a name of their business, their location, and the nature of the complaint. For further information, you can visit our agency's head office at Ganji Street, Sophia, or you can visit one of the regional offices to make your environmental complaint. You can visit our WIM office in the Quarantine, or our Linden office in the Lynn Building, Mackenzie, Linden. Please note that all information collected from the public will be treated with the strictest confidence. However, complainants should be willing to attend court and testify should the matter require legal action.
Miss Sonia, wait, I want to ask you something.
Oh gosh,
Morning, Miss Sonia.
Morning, Miss Cheryl. I'm late for work.
I noticed the other day y'all had a big campaign with them police officers, so shutting down them people barbecue, wedding, dance. Man, how y'all expect these people to make money and survive?
Oh, Miss Cheryl, that is far from the truth. The EPA and the Guyana Police Force are actually working together to ensure that persons who conduct certain businesses and activities are authorized. We've tried to allow them to adhere to the noise regulations.
Well, this gonna be a new law. What law is this?
These laws were always in place. It's now that we get all these complaints at the agency, we are trying to enforce them. The Environmental Protection Act has been in place since 1996, and it states that persons and businesses must apply for environmental authorization before operating a sound-making device.
Well, girl, I never know this thing is prior to the law.
So if you're keeping a barbecue or an open-air function, like a wedding or a concert, especially in your community, right, and you're playing a music system, you have to apply for a short-term noise permit. And for persons that operate in a business and you got generators and stuff, you have to apply for a long-term permit. And that is applicable to bars and hotspots and clubs also.
Well, now that you explain it, I understand it. It's unfair to the elderly, sick people, and even them little children.
That is correct. According to the World Health Organization, loud noise can cause stress, sleep deprivation, and hearing impairment, and I'm sure you wouldn't want that.
Oh, now I understand. Thank you for explaining it, Miss Sonia.
For more information, you can contact the EPA at 225-5471 or visit our office at Ganji Street, North Sophia, Georgetown.
Come around, please.
Morning. My name is Deborah. I just want to get some information.
Good morning. I am Odessa Duncan, Senior Environmental Officer. How may I assist you today?
Tell me something. They got this man next door by me breaking on this big building, and it's bare asbestos in the roof. I could remember hearing on your TV program that asbestos is dangerous to human health and the environment.
This is correct. The Environmental Protection Act states that any person or facility that is storing, treating, transporting, and or disposing of hazardous waste material must be authorized by the EPA to do so.
Oh, but it's now I'm really hearing about this hazardous waste thing. Tell me something more.
Hazardous waste are waste material with properties that are dangerous or capable of having a harmful effect on human health and the environment, including things like paint, fertilizers, and pesticides, waste oil, and asbestos. These things have the potential to cause cancer, birth defects, kidney failure, and reproductive impairment, with children being at the highest risk. The environmental authorization in this case gives the legal right to transport, store, and dispose of this material in accordance with the EP Act Chapter 2005 Laws of Guyana. This ensures you and your operation and your process is safe for the environment and human health.
So you mean to tell me that all them leftover Christmas paint that I got on in my kitchen sink, I need authorization from EPA to get rid of it?
No, Miss Deborah. These items, once used for household purposes, does not require environmental authorization from the EPA. However, you should still take necessary steps to ensure that these materials are stored and disposed of in an environmentally safe manner.
Thank you so much for the information. I go in and tell him that he needs an environmental authorization. Thank you.